were using their own mind to deal with issues. After them, the gate of ijtihad was considered closed. So in jurisprudence, gate of ijtihad, the gate of individual reasoning was considered closed. And then finally, in philosophy, which had really taken off from the Greek philosophers, when they were translated in Baghdad in the 800 period, all these great works of Greek philosophy that had been lost to the West in the Dark Ages, when Christianity put another similar blanket down over Christian thought, what we call the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. And there was no real thought that was credible thinking, except religious thinking. Well, that happened with a famous Muslim, Al-Ghazali. He had studied the philosophers, and this would be about the 1000s. And originally he was a student of the philosophers, but then he became disillusioned with them, so he wrote the book I told you about, Takafut. I don't have the spelling of this right. Philosophiyun, something like that. Anyway, the incoherence of the philosophers, attacking them. And after him, he went in the way of Sufism. Now, Sufism is Islamic mysticism. No one knows why it's called Sufism, except that it's, they say Suf in Arabic means wool, and they wore wool clothes the same as like Buddhist teachers maybe wore, I forget what their yellow robe or cloak that they wore was made out of something, I don't know exactly what the material was, but something that they wore. It could relate to that influence. No one even knows if it really comes from the wool cloaks that they wore. That's the theory. And a Sufi is a mystic. It's close to what in the West came to be called, in the Christian period, Gnosticism. So it went away from this world to otherworldly pursuits, looking for the one, identification with the one, trying to get out of your body, become one with God. And many fundamentalist Muslims saw this as heresy, as we'll see in some of the texts that we're now going to look at very quickly. But Ghazali went in that direction. And for a long time, from about the 1100 AD on to maybe 1900 AD, Sufism swept the Islamic world. Frankly, I think it's a more healthy phenomenon than fundamentalism that we're now seeing. Now, these people did their own individual things and sought individual enlightenment and salvation through their own practices, and either through like yoga, Hindu type things, or dancing, or different things of that kind. But today, with this strict fundamentalism, anyone who steps out of line is considered to be an unbeliever, and even you could be killed if you are not towing the right line and things. This is, to my mind, an even worse backward step than the Sufism one was. Now, that's just my own personal judgment. Most of them may think otherwise. That's up to you. But I think the world of Sufism, if nothing else, is a very creative world. And what I told you about Ibn Rushd in Spain in the 1200s, sometimes spelled like that, sometimes spelled like that. In Western translations, he became known as Averroes. and he was translated in the West. Dante, the poet of Italy in the 1200s, knows about Ibn Rushd already. Averroes and all the people that you hear if you're a Catholic in the Catholic Church, the Scholastic Synthesis and Thomas Aquinas, they all took the work of Averroes and all these other Islamic philosophers and just applied it to Christianity. St. Thomas Aquinas had not a single stitch of originality in him. This is all Islamic work, came through Spain and then came into the places, into the Latin West, and philosophers began to pick it up. But it did trigger the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and the humanistic revival in the Middle Ages in Europe. So in 1300 you get people like Petrarch and Boccaccio, and 14 and 1500 you get the Renaissance, the 1600s you get the 1700s you get the Enlightenment, and then you get the modern Western world as we know it. So through people like Averroes, the Greek philosophers and the previous classical learning came through to the West, with the added dimension of his thought on top of it. So this was a real parting of ways between the West and the East. The East, as I told you, rejected Averroes. Again, I've had many Muslims come to me, when will we be great like the West? Well, when you remember who Averroes was. And if you ask some of your teachers in mosques and other places, who is Ibn Rushd, they'll look at you with who, what? They'll be like, we don't even know him. That's because he was basically drummed out of Islam and became valued in the West. But that's not to say that he is not a great thinker. Anyway, he was from Islamic Spain in the 1200s. I'm hurrying along here because I want to get over to our cultural things. So to my mind, the dividing line came. Averroes wrote a book, Takfut, as I told you, Incoherence of Incoherence, attacking Ghazali, but it didn't have a lot of, it didn't make a big impression in the Muslim world. And from the 1300s to the present, very little culturally occurred in the Islamic world. Nothing that one can really put one's finger on. And today, if you look at the culture in the Islamic world, it is, and I'm not trying to be cruel, but it is, I don't say a low culture, but it has not nearly the grandeur of the earlier culture. They're right to look back to Golden Age, because from the 800s to the 1300s, there was a Golden Age. There literally was a Golden Age of Islamic culture. And the creativity at the present time is like a pale shadow of it.